So for the longest time on Twitter, so many people have been mad at me about my takes involving the Dragon Ball Z series. I, like some others, am of the opinion that Toriyama probably should have stopped after the Frieza saga. It doesn't mean that I haven't enjoyed a lot of the moments or arcs after that, but I definitely do believe that after the Frieza saga, there is a noticeable drop in quality all across the board, outside of obviously animations. And this is not me advocating that Dragon Ball Z is a bad anime or even a product of the time. If you go back and watch the Frieza saga, even if you're new to the anime genre, I still believe you can enjoy it even as much as people did back in the day. But I'm not gonna lie, I'm getting really tired of people acting like DBZ does not have its flaws, especially after the Frieza saga, so I've decided to come and do a little series on this channel about the series as a whole. Now obviously I am talking about the specific Dragon Ball Z arc with the Saiyans, Goku and Vegeta's first fight, the Frieza saga, and obviously the Cell saga and Buu. I watched both Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Z Kai, so I guess my opinion is kind of mixed with both of them, but it's pretty much the same thing, let's be real here. Today we are going to spend time talking about the Frieza saga and what makes it the greatest arc in the history of Dragon Ball Z without question. For one, let's start off with the characters. In the Frieza arc, it feels like every single character actually has a purpose and meaning to the story. Everyone from Goku to Chiaotzu has a meaningful purpose towards this story. For example, somebody like Yamcha, who is completely made fun of throughout the entire series and has a pretty sad death against the Cybermen that is kind of a meme now, don't get me wrong, but in the moment, you looked at that and said, damn, shit just got real. Yamcha was one of those characters that, though was not the strongest, he was still considered one of the characters that we bonded with in the Dragon Ball series, and if you didn't watch Dragon Ball, I don't blame you, that's fine. But even if you just watched Dragon Ball Z, when you saw his death, you knew it was a big deal and the characters treated it as such. And the same thing applies to characters like Chiaotzu and Tien. Sure, they obviously lost fighting Nappa, but their deaths were seen as a big deal for the team. Hell, the whole reason that the Frieza saga took place with them going to Namek was because they wanted to bring them back to life. And if you look at the other sagas in Dragon Ball Z, they just don't replicate the same level of importance for these minor characters. But we'll touch on that when we get to those videos. The same thing applies to a character like Krillin. This is really when he's at the peak of his powers when it comes to true importance in the Dragon Ball Z franchise. I mean, in the Cell saga, don't even get me started on the way he folded there, but we'll touch on that in another video, trust me. But in the Frieza saga, Krillin is really the reason why they were able to go to Namek in the first place. He paid good attention to the conversations that Vegeta and Nappa had with each other and connected the dots between that and Piccolo's upbringing as a Namekian. And because of his deductive reasoning and just basic common sense in those situations, he was able to connect the dots for them to go to Namek in the first place to get the Dragon Balls. Another thing about Krillin in this series is that he actually has common sense when it comes to fighting. Some people believe that this is like the beginning of when Krillin became useless as a fighter, but I completely disagree. There were moments throughout the entire series, whether it was against Nappa or against Vegeta, Frieza, where Krillin was able to use his wit and intelligence to last a lot longer than he should have. And sure, I do understand that Frieza did kill him in the fight on Namek, but that was after Goku showed up. Before any of that even happened, I would even argue he contributed more in the fight than Vegeta did. All Vegeta did was get his ass whooped by Frieza when he thought he was a Super Saiyan, and we'll get to Vegeta in a second. And a lot of people talk about how Piccolo basically nurtured and raised Gohan, but let's not forget about Uncle Krillin, man. When they went to Namek, it wasn't Piccolo that was with Gohan guiding him along the way. It was Bulma and Krillin. And I obviously say Bulma lightly because for the most part it was Krillin. Even characters like Dodoria, who informed Vegeta about his home planet being destroyed, or Zarbon, who beat the shit out of Vegeta, which caused him to grow exponentially in strength to compete with the Ginyu Force when he healed up. Let's also not forget somebody like Mr. Popo, who explained to them how Kami even got to Earth in the first place, which led to them getting the spaceship to go to Namek. I'm telling you, man, the level of importance that they put on these minor, weaker characters is through the roof in this series, and you don't get that in the other ones following. And if you do, it's just not to the degree that you get in this one. Hell, even a character like Raditz, who was only there for a couple of episodes, leads an impact that goes all the way up to the finale of this arc. Raditz is the whole reason why this arc even existed, as he went to Earth to get Goku in the first place. If his scouter doesn't record his entire interactions on Earth with people like Goku, Piccolo, and the gang, Vegeta and Nappa never come to Earth in search of the Dragon Balls in the first place. And when you really think about it, Raditz blew the minds of everybody watching this show. Think about this, right? If you weren't watching Dragon Dragon Ball, you definitely missed out a little bit on the context, but let me fill you in. Goku, throughout all of Dragon Ball, you knew that there was definitely something wrong with him, but you couldn't put your finger on it because they didn't give you real details. This was a kid that was abnormally strong, and when he first met Bulma, he survived a gunshot to the face. And at nighttime, he transformed into an ape and almost destroyed everybody. But even though we knew Goku was weird and abnormally strong, we just assumed that's just how things were on this earth, I guess. I mean, you basically got dragons and flying dinosaurs on this earth, and then you throw in somebody that looks like Piccolo, so you just kind of have to accept things for the way they are. But then, out of nowhere, on episode 2 of Dragon Ball Z, Raditz shows up, kidnaps Goku's kid, and tells him, hey man, you're actually from another planet and you were sent here to destroy this earth. And by the way, I'm your brother and our planet was destroyed years ago. That would blow your mind if you were watching that at the time. Now honestly, I could talk about all these characters like Krillin, Raditz, Tien, but no characters get the best development compared to Vegeta and Piccolo. Let's talk about Vegeta first before we get to the Namekian man himself. Vegeta, when he first appears in Dragon Ball Z, is one of the most heartless, cruel, and just straight up evil characters that you will ever meet. Nappa basically was his best friend and ultimate dick rider, to be honest, and Vegeta disposed of him the minute he got the opportunity to. And even though Nappa was an evil guy himself, at least when they first got to Earth, Nappa's mentality was, we're going to save Raditz and bring him back to life with the Dragon Balls. But Vegeta was the one who proposed that they said, fuck that idea, let's go for immortality instead. So off rip, we knew Vegeta was just an evil guy and it didn't look like he could be redeemed at all. But it's very clear that when he gets in the fight with Goku and actually has to be humble to some degree, losing to the Earthlings, it's clear that that affects his whole outlook on everything throughout the remainder of the show.
Blood! My noble blood spilled by the sheer luck of such trash! No, I will not allow this to stand! I cannot allow this to stand!
He thought he was Billy Badass until he actually ran into Billy Badass. And for a character like Vegeta that was basically raised the Prince of all Saiyans with all that pride, seeing him have to handle that and all the burden of basically the weight of every single Saiyan who has ever lived, it's such a great story for his character, and by the end of the Frieza arc you can see everything that's affected him. The guy hated Krillin, Gohan, and Goku, but then he has to work with them in order to take down a common enemy in Frieza. And seeing all the moments where he would watch Goku and basically be in awe of his strength, it made him put things in perspective to understand that maybe he's just not the shit the way he thought he was. And his story continues past the Frieza arc, so I'm gonna save that for the other videos. But I would say, man, when Vegeta was dying on the floor after Frieza shot him right through the chest, the speech he gave to Goku about how he opened up about everything that went on throughout his entire childhood and upbringing, I ain't gonna lie, it still hits me right here in the feels. No cap.
I'm begging you, please! Beat him! For me! For the pride of our race! You must defeat him! Please!
But as much as I enjoyed Vegeta's character development throughout this entire arc, nothing beats what happens with Piccolo. In the beginning of Dragon Ball Z, Piccolo is still the same evil ass motherfucker he was at the end of Dragon Ball. He wants to take over the world, but he has to beat Goku in order to do so. But then Raditz shows up and he realizes, similar to Vegeta later on, that he's not the shit anymore.
You ain't even the shit no more!
And when Goku dies, he understands that he needs Goku in order to beat these Saiyans that are coming to Earth in a year, so he then has to put aside his plans for conquering the Earth in order to team up with these guys that he was just trying to kill in the previous arc in order to defeat a common enemy. And in the process of doing so, he has to train the son of his own nemesis. I mean, if you're Piccolo, it doesn't get any more humbling than that. This kid could grow up and end up beating you one day if you actually do conquer the Earth, especially if you have to kill his dad in order to do so. But I have to say, the fact that Gohan was able to just treat Piccolo like a normal person and not like the demon that he actually is, it was truly some beautiful work, I ain't gonna lie, because it showed Piccolo that he could actually be someone with true emotions and open up to Gohan in ways he didn't even think he was capable of, which truly makes the moment of him having to sacrifice himself for Gohan just that much more satisfying and sad. And sure, Piccolo didn't directly tell anybody everybody that he wasn't evil anymore, but in that moment, he basically told us without having to. Later on in Dragon Ball Z Super, they tried to replicate this exact same moment and it completely fell flat, which leads into my second point about this show, which is that the moments later on in the show don't top anything the way they do in this arc. And what I mean by that is when you look at the other arcs in comparison to the Frieza arcs, there are times that they try to replicate a lot of these moments and they simply fall flat to some degree or don't feel as special because the creativity truly isn't there and they're obtained basically by the exact same means that they were originally in the first arc. For example, when Goku goes Kaioken for the first time in Dragon Ball Z, it actually feels like a whole big deal as he actually wins the fight with Vegeta before he turns up into that ape. And because of the success of the Kaioken, that's why in the moment of him fighting Frieza when he was trying to go Kaioken a bunch of times, it felt like a big deal to truly emphasize how strong Frieza was because it didn't leave a mark on him. There really isn't a single moment where the Kaioken feels that special in any of the other arcs, but no moment will ever supersede the OG Super Saiyan 1 transformation from Goku on Frieza. I mean, just imagine the setting here. Goku has been getting his ass whooped by Frieza and he hits him with the Spirit Bomb. And at that time, it was actually believable that Frieza was dead as we've never seen anyone survive the Spirit Bomb. And before people hit me with the whole Vegeta survived the Spirit Bomb blah blah blah, please, Vegeta took a portion of the Spirit Bomb that Goku had left in his body, not the full-on thing. But then when Frieza actually pops back up, he not only shoots Piccolo, but he kills Krillin right in front of Goku. And if you guys remember, we were basically led to believe that Goku did not have it in him to go Super Saiyan as he told Vegeta, I can never harden my heart like that. But even then, nobody could have predicted that Krillin would die because that was his second time dying, and this was well before Dragon Ball Z started breaking its own rules, bringing everybody back to life. So we were basically led to believe that Krillin was dead forever, which justified like hell why Goku was able to turn into a Super Saiyan in that moment. And whether you disagree or agree with a lot of the stuff I've said in this video so far, I think that everybody can agree that the Super Saiyan transformations have been beat to death and nothing will ever top the OG one because it was original and unique. And I'm not saying the other transformations didn't have things about it that felt special, but nothing is ever gonna top your first love. Let's keep it a buck. So as far as the moments in this arc, I truly do believe it's peak. This was the first time that we saw Vegeta get his ass whooped and Goku coming to save the day. The fight with Goku and Vegeta I believed is one of the best fights throughout the entire series. Then you throw in Goku when he shows up and destroys the Ginyu Force like they were nothing. That was pretty cool too. And of course, the Goku and Frieza fight is one of the most iconic fights in all of anime, and for good reason, which leads into my final point about this arc, which is the dynamic between Goku and Frieza. Let's talk about Goku before we get into Frieza, because in my opinion, Frieza is the best thing about this arc, but we'll get to that in a second. Goku truly is one of the best main characters in all of anime. I know a lot of people have soured on his character, especially in later arcs, but me personally, I still and always will love Goku. For starters, his character is very consistent while still being able to develop. As I mentioned earlier, when Vegeta was on his deathbed telling Goku to harden his heart so he could become a Super Saiyan, Goku's response was, I don't think it's possible for me to get to that point. But then we saw when his back was against the wall and anger fueled him to become a Super Saiyan after Krillin was killed. But even despite all of those things that Goku went through, he was still very consistent with his character, for example, him sparing Frieza. A lot of people hate that moment, but me personally, I think it's one of the best parts of the show that actually encompass everything that Goku is about. If you remember, Goku literally begged Krillin not to kill Vegeta, and his reasoning was in part due to the fact that if we could get Piccolo on our side, why can't Vegeta do the exact same thing one day? Which of course he was right. So why in a similar situation where Frieza is laying on the ground with his body chopped up in half, would Goku not show similar compassion? He's already beaten this guy and he's no threat to him whatsoever. Are we gonna forget that Goku was slapping him like some child at a point in time in the fight? So Frieza really was no threat to him. And if you remember, before he even gave Frieza his energy, he was debating even doing so. video, as he told Frieza, "How many people have you killed? How many people did you slaughter and not show any mercy to? Why would I do that for you when you didn't do it for others?" Obviously in the end he did give him his energy regardless, but it did show consistency in his character while also showing growth because he doubted it. Hell, even in the fight with Frieza, he even told Frieza, "I'm doing this for everybody that you've killed. I'm doing this to represent the Saiyan race." And if you remember, before the fight even started, Goku told him he didn't care about Bardock because remember, Frieza told him, "Hey, you look just like a Saiyan I killed when I destroyed planet Vegeta." But over time in the fight, Goku's outlook on everything was changing every single second of it. Goku may not have gotten the development that guys like Vegeta or Piccolo got, but the consistency that he shows throughout the show to his morals while also changing his outlook time after time after time is something that I think goes completely under the radar, not only for this arc but for other arcs in the future. And the dynamic between him and Frieza is truly something that they have never been able to replicate throughout the duration of the rest of the show. And that includes Super with characters like Jiren or Beerus, or hell, even Frieza when he came back. Because at the end of the day, when you look at the history of Goku and Frieza, they are damn near intertwined from the beginning of their existence. When Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta, it basically linked him and Goku forever. The whole reason he did that is because he knew that one day somebody was going to have to come up and eventually beat him, and they were going to be a Saiyan. As he saw and got word that the lower level Saiyans like Bardock, who was Goku's father, were able to do missions that even the higher Saiyans weren't able to do. I mean, hell, the whole reason Goku was sent to Earth to conquer it was because that's what Saiyans were trained to do. Go and conquer as many planets as possible while working for Frieza. And that then brings me to Frieza, who in my opinion is the best villain throughout the entire show and one of my favorite villains throughout all of anime. Frieza is just evil to the bone, and there is just no redeeming this guy. Now, I haven't watched Dragon Ball Z Superhero. I truly hope that's not the case in the direction that they're going in to redeem his character, because that would just piss me off. But as far as Dragon Ball Z, Frieza is not redeemable whatsoever. The guy is racist. He refers to the Saiyans as monkeys consistently, and I won't lie, it is kind of funny.
Well, naturally, I'd expect nothing less from that monkey. I can easily shatter through the power ceiling of that monkey race. I didn't think I'd see Vegeta with you, but monkeys do travel in troops.
But then you throw in just the way that he tortures people and likes to fuck with them. It's just some sick, demented, torturous shit, and I love it, I can't lie. There's a good chance that Frieza probably didn't even have to go to his final form to beat the Z Fighters, but he just did it to fuck with them. I mean, it's very clear that Frieza did not give a shit when he was fighting those Z Fighters, because if he wanted to, he could have killed them anytime he wanted to. But due to his arrogance and character, it made sense why he prolonged that fight as long as possible. And if you remember, he was all about his business when he turned into his final form. When he saw that Dende was the one healing them, as soon as he turned into his final form, he killed him. When Vegeta thought he was that nigga and he turned into a Super Saiyan, what did Frieza do? He killed his ass too. And as soon as Goku got just a little bit of an edge with that spirit bomb on Frieza, he killed Krillin and he murked Piccolo, or at least he tried. Frieza, unlike a lot of the other villains later on in the Dragon Ball Z series, actually made sense in his motivations as well, as he understood that the Saiyans were growing stronger and stronger and stronger, and even though he destroyed planet Vegeta, he was already getting the sense that Vegeta was going to turn on him one day. And with him always being the strongest Saiyan, Frieza wanting to obtain immortality to secure him as the strongest being in the universe made sense. From the beginning of the arc, it's very clear that Toriyama had a set plan from beginning till end on how he wanted the story to flow. And I believe the dynamic of Goku and Frieza is a perfect example of that. They're interlocked together completely, and throughout their whole fight, even though Goku was outmatched for a good chunk of it, it never felt like he was too far behind to where he couldn't compete and it got boring. And that's what makes the latter half of the fight, where Goku has the upper hand after he transforms into a Super Saiyan, that much more satisfying. Frieza being that cruel and heartless with actual motivations makes him the perfect enemy for somebody like Goku. I mean, even the downfall of Frieza on planet Namek makes sense for his character. He was even given a second chance by Goku, but because of his arrogance and refusal to lose, he couldn't accept defeat from somebody that he looks at and refers to as an ape.
I suppose that's all you're good for, you monkey.
What was that, Frieza?
Frieza was amazing, man, and I believe that if you don't think he's the best villain that Dragon Ball Z has ever put out there, you're just on drugs, for real. Just go ahead and put the crack pipe down, because I guarantee you, you're not gonna think that once you sober up. In conclusion though, I'm telling you, Dragon Ball Z was never the same after this arc. And there's a reason I didn't talk about Gohan, because we're gonna get to him when we talk about the Cell Saga. I truly don't think that this series has put together an arc this concise and well-flowing and thought out throughout the remainder of its existence. And don't get me wrong, I've enjoyed moments and even some movies from Dragon Ball Z, but I would be lying if I told you that I thought it ever reached the heights that it did in the Frieza arc. But as I've mentioned multiple times in that video, those are videos and thoughts that I will get to later on. Be sure to like this video though, comment your opinions down below, and subscribe to the channel. Press that bell for post notifications as well to stay up to date with the latest content on this channel. Your boy Omo Mustard is signing out. Y'all stay safe and be easy. Peace.